Good evening, everyone. I'm Georgia Davis, and welcome to AZ Illustrated Nature. Tonight, we'll update you on one of the most iconic yet controversial animals in the American Southwest. Also, hear from the prominent man often referred to as the grandfather of climate science. But first, here's a look at today's top stories.
TUSD's superintendent submitted his resignation today. Fernanda Echavarri brings us that story.
Tucson Unified School District Superintendent says he is not being forced out or fleeing the district because of controversy. Still, John Petticone's resignation comes as a surprise to board members. He will leave TUSD in June, a year before his contract expires.
Quite frankly, I believe that it is just the right time. From the beginning of my service to this district, I made it clear that I was not here for the long term. My intention was to move this organization forward on a trajectory towards success and make it possible for the next superintendent to be successful, and I believe that we have done that.
He says the last 2 years have been difficult for him, the board, and the community because of controversy surrounding TUSD's Mexican American Studies classes. Currently, the district is facing a budget deficit of $17 million and the closure of 11 schools. Petticone says the new leader will have to change public perception of the district.
It's a culture that's been created where it's fashionable to watch TUSD have trouble. It's terrible.
TUSD Governing Board President Adelita Grijalva says the district has had 5 superintendents in the 10 years that she has been on the board.
While unfortunate for the district, I do feel it's going to be a loss for the district. I think it's an opportunity for the board and for staff to get together and look for somebody that could stay more permanent.
District officials say a national search to replace Petticone will start immediately. I'm Fernanda Echavarri, Arizona Public Media.
The Arizona House Appropriations Committee held its first hearing today on the governor's plan to expand Medicaid or access in Arizona. Committee members questioned legislative staff and heard public testimony. No votes were taken. And that's a look at tonight's headlines.
Many residents in Arizona and New Mexico are celebrating a historic anniversary that's connected to one of the rarest land animals in the world. Lobo Week begins this Saturday, March 23rd, to honor the Mexican gray wolf. After humans wiped them out in our region decades ago, scientists reintroduced the animal in the 1990s with much fanfare and controversy. Next, we'll hear from opponents and supporters of this subspecies of the gray wolf. Tony Paniagua begins our coverage.
The Mexican gray wolf used to roam freely over millions of acres in North America, but after nearly going extinct, their territory was limited to restrictive enclosures, breeding pens as part of recovery efforts in the United States. However, in 1998, the work and dreams of many supporters finally became reality. With former Interior Secretary Bruce Babbitt and other dignitaries on hand, the animals were reintroduced into the wild after getting some time to become familiar with their new surroundings.
Oh, it was really an uplifting experience.
Craig Miller was there then, and he continues to be involved in this endeavor. Miller is the Southwest representative of Defenders of Wildlife, which works on behalf of large native carnivores such as the Mexican gray wolf.
Everyone came together to right a wrong of the past as we saw it. And we knew it wasn't going to be easy, and biologists didn't know if these captive raised animals had retained their instincts, necessary to survive in the wild. We didn't know if wolves were going to be able to establish territories or breed or kill native prey or avoid conflicts with humans and livestock enough to be able to survive. And while it's been a rocky road, there have been a lot of challenges. There have been a lot of successes too, and I think the fact that the population's on an upward trajectory is a sign that things are working. And I think we've got solutions that work.
Miller says the solutions include cooperative efforts with ranchers and other reintroduction opponents that reduce the number of cattle that are killed by the wolves. Many of these ranchers turned out in full force in 1998, expressing their concerns then and still not actively or openly embracing the reintroduction programs. Miller says there are more than 100 ranchers in the affected territory, but less than 20% are working with his group. Still, there has been progress over the years.
Yeah, I think it's changing. I think people were, 15 years ago, people were very hesitant to get involved. For example, in 1998, between Arizona and New Mexico, there were exactly 2 ranchers who were willing to work with us on partnership projects involving range riders and managing cattle a little differently to reduce vulnerability. This year we had 16 projects. So, the number of ranchers who are willing to cooperate with us and reduce conflicts and maybe even turn wolves into an asset for their operations is increasing, and that's encouraging. Trying to restore wolves and raise cattle at the same time is like trying to solve the Middle East crisis, and I think we've got a solution. That solution involves hiring sons and daughters of producers and training them and providing tools and techniques and resources to help better monitor livestock in the presence of wolves and intervene to prevent wolves from developing a dependency on cattle as a food source. We provide range riders, we help establish secure night pastures, we'll lease alternate allotments, we'll provide supplemental feeding, we'll help move cattle into safe areas to create security for calving operations. And we've also, through different partnerships, have developed ways for people to benefit from the presence of wolves. And it's all about helping to reintegrate wolves into the landscape and helping people to learn how to accept them.
And he says part of the acceptance is driven by economics.
Yeah, I think there's a growing acceptance of wolves, and business leaders are keen to the idea that they can profit off of the restoration of wolves and what that represents.
Wolf-related marketing efforts often result in money from visitors as part of ecotourism or other activities, or the sale of different products, including T-shirts or even beer.
And there will be a reception at the Pine Top Brewing Company in Pine Top, where there will be an unveiling of Alpha Male Imperial Ale. It's a commemorative brew celebrating the return of wolves and what that represents for Arizona and the Southwest, sort of a rewilding of our southwestern landscapes.
Miller admits the road to recovery has been bumpy and challenging, but he remains optimistic. He credits changing attitudes, increasing awareness, and improved efforts that are giving this wolf a second chance in the territory it formerly inhabited for thousands of years.
Oh, it's inspiring. We've got the rarest and most critically endangered land mammal in the world that was almost lost. I mean, you can't get closer to extinction than having only one female remaining in the wild, and that's the case with Mexican wolves. And fortunately, she and a handful of males were live captured, brought into captivity, and 20 years later were reintroduced. Their offspring were reintroduced into Arizona and New Mexico, and today we've got 75 animals that we know of, 11 packs, and good partnerships in place with landowners and ranchers who have legitimate reasons to oppose or have concerns about wolves, who are now working with us on alleviating conflicts. So it's very inspiring.
As you just heard, despite increasing public acceptance and support for the wolf in Arizona and New Mexico, there are still detractors of the reintroduction program. Joining us from Phoenix is Patrick Bray, Executive Vice President of the Arizona Cattlemen's Association. And a lot of people are celebrating this anniversary. Do you think this is a cause for celebration?
I'm not sure that it's a call for celebration. There have been some successes with the program. I think if you look over the past 15 years, the population has held steady between 40 and 60 animals, wolves out there on the ground. And I think one of the huge benefits that came out of that is that there were some successful packs out there that are truly wild, and they keep to their business, and we're okay with that. The struggles that we have on the ground are usually those that interfere with our business of running livestock, and more importantly, those wolves that interfere with the day-to-day lives of those rural communities that have to deal with the reintroduction.
Right, so let's get into that for just a moment, because the main food source for wolves, and scientists have been studying this, and they're showing it's elk, but that isn't always the case?
Oh, absolutely. It isn't always the case. Originally they had talked about, smaller ungulates being their prey-based deer, and these wolves have adapted to elk, and it's just going to be just like human nature. It's animal instinct that if they're hungry enough, they'll eat whatever's in front of them. And so, of course, cattle are part of their prey base. But more importantly, I think that if you look at a top of the food chain predator that is roaming around out there, it causes stress amongst those livestock. So you're talking side effects of decreased weight in mother cows and in calves, abortions, and a lot of times wolves just like to kill for sport because that's what kind of animal they are.
Interesting. So you're talking about not just kills, but stress having impacts. Of course, in 2009, the federal government, for the first time, started to put money forward to help pay for, compensation when there's cattle loss, or some prevention measures like fencing. So focusing, of course, on preventing kills and then payment after the fact. So how do you feel like that program is working? Is it working?
Well, that program is pretty much gone to the wayside, and anybody that has worked with those types of government programs know it all sounds good on paper. And realistically, when you get out on the ground and you start to try and implement it, it is very difficult to work. We have to go jump through the hoops to make sure that there's a biologist out there to review the kills and to confirm them, and sometimes we have trouble getting those folks out there to review that. Money is short all across the government. I think everybody's well aware of that. So this notion that they're still putting in absorbent amounts of fencing and range riding and hazing and all of that, it just doesn't exist today.
Do you have any suggestions that you think might work?
Bottom line is we're always willing to come to the table to talk and discuss this, and currently we are at the table. We sit on the recovery team. We have cattle ranchers that sit on those compensation committees to discuss how that can happen, and we always want to be proactive at our approach. So we want to deter wolves from coming into the communities and coming in and affecting our livestock, beforehand. We don't like to go through the process and have livestock killed and then having to be compensated that way. Furthermore, even though there may be a level of compensation for that cow, whatever market price is, it doesn't figure in the fact that now that rancher has to go find a replacement cow, spend that time making sure it fits the genetics of that herd, making sure it fits the geographic region so that it has the best ability to survive. All of that is not calculated in, so it makes it really difficult on those types of things.
Do you think there's some possibility of reaching a consensus on this?
At this point in time, I think the best solution is for the federal government to pull out, leave what is on the ground in the hands of the state, and the Arizona Department of Game and Fish is very capable in handling what is out there on the ground, and work with what is there to try and build that population further. But at this time, I just don't see the federal government, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, playing a proactive role in really helping this wolf thrive and succeed over in the Blue Range recovery.
All right, Patrick. Well, unfortunately, that's really all the time we have, but thank you so much for joining us to talk about this issue.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me on.
President Obama declared the U.S. is Israel's strongest ally and greatest friend, and he said peace in the Middle East is still possible.
Margaret Warner is traveling with the president and briefs us on his first trip to Israel as head of state.
Then we examine the allegations that chemical weapons have been used in the Syrian conflict.
Judy Woodruff updates the efforts to pass gun control legislation in Congress and around the country.
Ray Suarez talks to an emergency room doctor whose new book recounts his return home to work on the front lines in inner city Newark.
And Hari Srinivasan begins a series of stories on the impact high-speed broadband is making on our lives. Tonight, the changing landscape of the entertainment industry.
That's all ahead on tonight's NewsHour.
Dunya Mikhail grew up with war. She fled Iraq after the Gulf War, though earlier memories still come in fragments.
Our home in Baghdad with the roof where we would sleep in summer nights, and we would go down when we hear the siren. The war was like the norm.
An Iraqi-American poet reflects on her lost homeland on the next morning edition from NPR News.
Climate change is now one of the top concerns for scientists around the world. Some experts, however, have been studying this issue for decades. Tonight, we introduce you to Dr. Walley Broker, a geoscientist who teaches and conducts research at Columbia University and who recently visited Tucson to guest lecture. Dr. Broker is often described as an intellectual giant in climate science. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know you've had a busy day. You've talked to a lot of people. I appreciate you making some time to come in here. So you were one of the first people back in the 70s to start saying we need to be paying attention to climate change and human-caused climate change. How did you get to that realization?
Well, I was not the first. I mean, ever since the 1950s, people were thinking about it in a serious way. But until 1958, there'd never been accurate measurements of CO2 in the air, so nobody could say whether it was going up or down or what. And then Charles David Keeling, who was at Scripps Institution in La Jolla, started a monitoring program on the extinct volcano in Hawaii, and he showed that indeed CO2 was rising, and he could say that a little more than 50% of what we produced every year stayed in the air. The rest presumably went in the ocean and into vegetation. So I was aware of that, but that's the year I got my PhD. So during the next, let's say, 13, 14 years, there was no warming, and yet CO2 is going up and up and up. By the way, it started at about, in 1850, we now know from air trapped in polar ice, that it was about 280 parts per million. When Keeling's record started in 1958, it was 315. It's now about 395. So it's going up, and it's going up ever more rapidly, about 3 parts per million per year. So it'll reach 400 in a couple years.
For those of us who don't know what that means, this part per million, I mean, how?
That means out of 1 million molecules of air, 395 are CO2, and the rest are oxygen, nitrogen, argon, and other things. So that's just the concentration. If you take a sample of air and you have a device to measure how much of that air is CO2.
And how alarming is this 300 plus parts per million?
Well, what's alarming is that we're getting 85% of our energy from fossil fuels. In the year 1990, there were 20 billion tons of CO2 were added to the atmosphere, 20. Last year, 32. So we're not decreasing the amount of CO2 that's going in the air, we're increasing it. And the fear is that this buildup will eventually cause all kinds of havoc on the planet. And it may affect food production, sea level, lots of things. Everything is going to be changed a little bit. And so ideally, we would go to other sources of energy. But in the last couple of years, there have been big discoveries of fossil fuels, oil and natural gas. So that has ensured our supply of those, and they remain cheap. If they started to run short, they'd go up. But that means that wind power, solar power, they're becoming less and less favorable economically, and therefore the replacement is not going on. We continue to get most of our energy from from fossil fuels. And that CO2 will stay in the atmosphere for hundreds of years. So it's not as if it stays there a few years and gets washed out. It stays there until it's sucked up by the ocean, which is a very slow process.
Well, let's go that direction. That gets back sort of to the question I asked you and didn't give you time to answer. So your work is dealing with the interaction between the ocean and climate change?
Well, two aspects of it. One was I was heavily involved in trying to understand how fast what we call deep ocean is ventilated. That means how rapidly our new deep waters descending from the polar regions, replacing old water that was down there, which is then pushed up to the surface. How long does that take? Well, it turns out it takes about 800 years to replace all the water in the deep sea. And so that sort of sets the time scale for uptake of the CO2 by the ocean. So eventually it'll take up most of the CO2 we produce, but we're going to have to wait several hundred years. So we're going to be stuck with it for a long time. The other aspect is that ice cores taken in Greenland showed something that nobody had expected, that the climate of Greenland, and it turned out the whole northern hemisphere, underwent sharp warmings and coolings during glacial time that were 10 degrees centigrade. They were huge. And the question is, what in the hell could cause that? Because it happened very quickly in a decade. And I was the first one to point out that if you turned off the what we call deep water production in the northern Atlantic, then that would do the trick. And that was in the mid-'80s, and that stood the test of time. And so we now know that the ocean can do some outrageous things, and when it does it, it has a strong effect on the atmosphere, and hence the climate of the continents. So that's why I say we're poking an angry beast, and the smaller the poke, the less likely a violent reaction. But it's very scary because we have no global plan of how to stop the CO2 emissions. They're getting bigger and bigger. They're not getting smaller and smaller.
So let's talk about carbon sequestration, since that's another part of this, this picture. So what does that mean? Is there hope in this technology?
Yes, I mean, I think it's essential we do that. Whether we will or not remains to be seen. There are two ways to recapture CO2 in the atmosphere. One is to actually recapture it from the atmosphere, just let air blow through something that will take the CO2 out as the air passes by. The other one, which is seemingly much better, would be to go at the stacks of power plants, not let it get into the air. But in either case, if you capture it, you have to do something with it, and it's a huge amount. So the idea would be to pressurize it, and you can make CO2 into a liquid, just like you can make water vapor into water. And you would then pump that CO2 down into subsurface reservoirs, sandstones, maybe basalt, and they would be designed so that, I mean, you would choose places where the CO2 would be long-term trapping. Statoil in Norway has been doing this for 18 years in a sand reservoir beneath the North Sea. And they can see the CO2 down there seismically, and they know exactly what it's doing, and it's going to stay there. So it was encouraging, the first major test that you could really store it for a long time.
Well, that of course raises some questions for me, because I mean, you're still talking about you have this material that has to be held. I mean, does it sit underground? Does it cause? I've heard of other cases where we inject liquids or whatever it is underwater, and you have issues with, I don't know, seismic activity, leaking, that kind of thing.
You wouldn't do it in Japan. No, but I mean, you would do it in regions that are not highly seismically active. You have to choose your sites. But I think that's not amazing. I mean, every cure we're going to have is going to have its own problems. And so we have to sort of say, have to some balance and say, well, we got a really bad problem with CO2 in the air. Maybe there are some small hazards of burying it, but we're going to have to live with those because it's much worse not to bury it. Thing I've been pushing is that I think capturing it directly from the air is better than smokestacks. One thing is that takes care of automobiles and home heating, and it could take care of everything. Plus, you could do it anywhere on Earth, because if you pull CO2 out of the atmosphere, you can't make a hole in CO2. The atmosphere mixes too fast, so it would fill the hole in. Otherwise, I'd be dead in New York City if the pollutants that we produce there weren't carried away very rapidly. So fortunately, the atmosphere mixes really rapidly.
So, I mean, this is research that you're doing now. Any thoughts on how something like that could actually practically be put into place? You're talking about financing, you're talking about technology.
Well, I look at it this way. I mean, when garbage got to be a real problem, we started to collect it. When sewage started to be a big problem, we started to process, the sewage, the water. We now have to realize we can't use the atmosphere as a CO2 garbage can, and we're going to have to do that. Ideally, in one way or another, we're going to have to put a price on carbon. So if Exxon takes oil out of the earth and they're taking a certain number of carbon atoms, they have to pay into some fund the amount of money it would take to get that CO2 back when they release it. So it means it closes the cycle, that burning fossil fuels is null.
I know that's a topic a lot of people are talking about right now. And unfortunately, we're running out of time, but I wanted to ask you before we close. So you've also looked at what the repercussions are for Arizona. And from everything I've heard, it sounds like our climate may get more extreme with climate change.
Yeah. By example, with what happened when we had a cold Earth during glacial period, the rainfall in the Great Basin to the north of you was probably 2 to 3 times what it is now. And by analogy, the models would say that by warming the Earth, the opposite is going to happen, and maybe 2 or 3 times lower. Plus, we're going to shift the position of the tropical rain belts because we're going to heat up the northern hemisphere faster than the southern hemisphere. And we also know that in the past, when that happened, it dried out what we call the Great Basin to the north of Arizona. So, I think that's not a firm prediction, of course, because we're doing something a little different. But I would, if I were to bet, I'd bet 8 to 1 that it's going to happen. I mean, that's my own feeling.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you making some time to come in.
Well, it's a pleasure.
That's our show. To post a comment on any of these stories or to keep up with the latest news, go online to our website, azpm.org. I'm Georgia Davis. Thanks for watching.